About it. Hi, I'm James McGuire, and our topic today is how to use social media to promote your business, navigating the confusing and chaotic world of social media. To talk about that, we've got three great guests, actually more than just great, I would say industry-leading guests. With us is Mike Elgin, noted tech journalist and anchor of Tech News Today. Hello to you, Mike.
Hey, James, how you doing?
Good, good. I think you've got something like 3.5 million, 4 million followers on Google Plus. It's like the entire suburban population of Los Angeles follows you on Google Plus.
Yeah, it's great. I just have a great time on Google Plus. About 4.5, I think, now.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's still growing fast, and in fact, it's growing faster now than it used to. So,
Because the number grows on itself exponentially, I guess.
I guess it does, but it's really great. Still a great community, and I'm really enjoying it.
Okay, great. Also with us is Yifat Cohen, known as the G Plus go-to gal, noted expert on Google Plus Hangouts and social media in general. Hello to you, Yifat.
Hey James, how are you?
Good. I know you're there in Austin, correct?
No, Santorini.
Give me the name of the town again.
No, I am in Austin, but this is Santorini, the background.
Oh, nicer than Austin, possibly. But I know you also travel around the world talking about social media. You know, Mexico, Brazil, Israel.
Yeah, I have been flown to Mexico, Brazil, Israel with Google, talking about social media. And now I'm actually based in Austin right now and building the empire from here. So if you're in town,
you got to build the empire.
Yeah.
Also with us is Brian Fanzo, Chief Digital Strategist for Broadsuite, and someone who definitely eats, sleeps, and breathes social media. Hello to you, Brian.
Hello, excited to be here. I'm hanging out at a Starbucks trying to implement the mobile aspect of social media a little bit here from traveling, but I'm excited to be here.
And are you also like periscoping, meerkatting us, or is this not for this today?
We are periscoping it. So I am slightly addicted. I'm actually probably going to be the one that creates the 10-step program for those that are on Periscope. But yeah, we are streaming live on Periscope as well.
Okay, fantastic. I want to see what results that creates, if any. But okay, that's pretty neat. So, all right. So, you know, forget the canned questions. Let's talk about social media. If someone were to say to you, you know, what is the one thing I really need to be aware of in social media? You know, there's a lot out there. Just one thing you definitely keep aware of when you wake up in the morning. Mike, what would it be? What is that one central thing that you definitely want to focus on with social media?
I would say authenticity. I think one of the problems that businesses have is that they try so hard to do it well, and they end up looking like a canned, sort of prefabricated, artificial presence on social media. And the power of social media is to be a real person, for your company to be represented by an actual, real, living and breathing human being. And that's actually the hardest thing to pull off, but it's the one thing you should focus on, because, you know, criticism, for example, melts away in the face of a genuine, honest, transparent human being in almost every case. And it's just the most effective way to leverage the medium.
But then how does, you know, some large company or even a mid-sized company be that personal in the face of not being one person?
It's a hiring issue, or it's a selecting the right kind of person issue, and then it's giving them a minimum number of rules. You know, don't talk about this, that, and the other thing, because that gets us in legal trouble. Don't say this, that, and the other thing. Beyond those rules, say anything. Be transparent, and just turn that person loose and give them the empower that person to be as transparent as possible about how the company works and all that kind of stuff. It's counterintuitive to large companies. They don't want to be transparent, but to the extent that you can be transparent, to the extent that you can be a real person, you win.
Yifat, what do you think about, you know, personally as you wake up and you're gonna start your social media day? What's that one thing that you want to keep in mind for yourself?
I completely agree with Mike. I think that transparency is building the one thing that we're all missing, which is trust. So there's no trust, you know, anymore between people and employees, employers, people on the street. We got all the get-rich-quick schemes online, so it's even harder to trust people online. So when you're transparent and you connect with people, I think that will really set you apart. Also, the other thing is really to build an audience, not just go for the traffic. If you have, like Mike was saying, you know, enough people that are your evangelists, like Guy Kawasaki says, lonelylover52 at AOL.com. If you get enough of those,
Is
right?
that a real person you thought, or is
That's a real? Yeah, I got their email.
All right, great. Sounds pretty authentic.
We're all sending them emails now, right? Hey,
right.
lonely lover. But what happens is that that audience, every time you go to a new platform, now you bring your audience with you, and that's why you're successful on that platform. Think about Gary Vaynerchuk, for example, right? Oprah, whatever. You build an audience, and to build an audience, to have really people that love you, you have to be transparent, authentic, right, and personal. So
you've got to be a real person.
You got to be social.
Yeah. Brian, what's your take? I guess it's amazing about trust and sociability on the internet. It's like we thought years ago, oh, we'd never use our credit card there. But you think about all the deals that go on through, say, eBay every day. Like millions of strangers are transacting with millions of strangers without ever knowing each other. I mean, the possibility for trust is there. But at any rate, your idea, like what one idea do you think of when you wake up in the morning for social media?
So, I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to really, truly storytelling, right? And there's an element here where trust and transparency is essential, but nobody gets up in the morning and says, what is my favorite brand talking about on social media today? And I think that's key, is that not only is all the data out there for us to consume, but we have to find ways to relate with our audience. Nobody, really the trust between a brand. Nobody trusts a logo today, just like they don't trust a billboard as you're driving down the street. And so to build those relationships, I love that we kind of touched on trust and transparency, and really that authenticity element. And the reason some brands really struggle on social is the honest truth is they aren't that good at what they're doing. They've had this veil up, and the reason transparency scares them is because transparency does not guarantee trust, but it guarantees that you have an authentic window into who that brand is. And I came from the employee advocacy side, and the brands that are really doing it well, they're turning their greatest assets, which are their employees, into their rock stars. And if a brand can do that, not only are they going to build, not only a legion of followers and advocates, as we were kind of talking about, but also that's how they're going to really extend and scale, because we're not limited by what's around us today. We really have the option and the ability to connect globally without limitations.
What about a business specifically? If there's one piece of advice, say a business is just getting started, they've had some success, they must feel like hey, we've struck out of this process. We're trying to be authentic. What piece of advice would you give specifically a business in building their audience through social media? Mike, what's your take?
Well, the thing is that we talk about social media generically, but in fact, each social medium is a different community. It's got a different vibe to it. And so this is one of the big challenges from a sort of resources or time perspective, which is that how do you engage on each of the media in the way that they need to be engaged with? So, the sort of Facebook audience has one set of constraints. And by the way, this is one of the newest things in social media. I'm probably answering a question you're going to be answering in a few minutes, but one of the newest things in social media is this continued disintegration of the social media landscape. More people are going off into smaller and smaller social networks and even messaging applications that are substituting for social media. And there are hybrids like Snapchat where you can actually do some pretty rich, compelling storytelling inside of a messaging app that was originally meant to just send ephemeral messages to other people. It's a really interesting community because you have all these opportunities, but at the same time, the demographics on Snapchat are very, very different from than any other social media. Facebook is the only social media that is super mainstream, that's super broad-based, 1.4 billion users, but that has its own challenges as well, because people on Facebook oftentimes are reluctant to talk about brands, to talk about products, to talk about anything other than the content of their personal social lives.
Right. And
so there's no substitute for heavy engagement on each and every social network that you want to have a presence on. You have to immerse yourself in the culture of each social network and really understand what's happening, find the communities, and be a full-fledged member of those communities. That's that's something that's part science and part art, and it requires a lot of intuition and things like that. So again, it all goes back to who is doing the social media engagement for your company. It has to be somebody who's got a knack for it. and there's just no alternative, no substitute for having somebody who's good at social media going in and spending lots and lots of time being a full-fledged member of each and every community. So
You talk about tribes and communities. It's almost like we need to hire sociologists or people with sociology degrees to do social media.
yeah, yeah,
Maybe there is finally a use for that degree, a saleable use for that degree. I hope so.
right.
Brian, what would you say to businesses if they're struggling or floundering? What would you tell them to up their game on social media?
Well, I think it's partially comes down. I talk about storytelling all the time, but there's really nobody in the brand. There's nobody better to tell your story, to relate your value proposition, to really convey your message than you, the brand. But it's about humanizing that, and I think the biggest problem with social media is it actually takes a lot of work to listen, and those that are really good on social media listen first, and then they post messages that really are helping, are providing value. You know, I'm a disciple of the Jay Bear, Gary Vaynerchuk philosophy of, jab, 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 right hook, provide content that helps, build a relationship. My dad, told my brothers and I that we had to learn golf because business was done on the golf course. And it wasn't because he taught me how to hard sell on the golf course, and really I'm not that great at golf either. But what it was about building relationships, humanizing, and really relating with the people that you're trying to have this community with. So I think, one of the things that I see, one of the biggest trends, is the future of business is really about community. And it's not talking at them, it's talking with them. And so if you are a brand, no matter if you're on Facebook and you're on Google+, you have to understand the community and audience that are on each one of those. And I think that's where we miss it. We look for an easy button. We look for this idea that we can, if we just spam them enough because it worked on email marketing, that it's going to work on social. And sometimes I wonder that when we added the word marketing to the end of social media marketing, if it ruined part of our message on social media because we forget about the first word being social. And I think those brands that really get that, relate, listen, and convey their story. Don't sell me, give me a reason to care. And I think that's an element that true brands are really embracing, and the communities on each one of these social networks are amazing. I recently became a major addict to Snapchat, and it was a platform 6 months ago. I wrote a blog post that said it was the biggest waste of time I've ever found in social media, and now I'm apologizing because I'm loving the raw nature of this one-to-one communication and conversation on it. So for me, that's what I say. I tell brands, tell your story, embrace it, and really, if you're open, if you're human, and you're willing to fail fast, social media becomes pretty easy. The problem is those are scary things.
The thing with Snapchat, though, I mean, it's based on the ephemeral message. So how does the fact the message goes away help you tell your story on Snapchat?
Oh, I love that question. It's about capturing and acquiring attention. There's so much noise today on social media that someone will send you a tweet, and you'll be lucky if you saw it. And here's a great example. A small business, I was moving across the country, a small business named Bellhop Nation. They tweeted at me and said, Brian, I heard you talking about on Periscope that you were moving. We have college movers. If you need help, we're here for you. Well, I missed the tweet because I was driving across the country. When I pulled into it, and I had talked about on the Periscope that I was in love with Snapchat. When I pulled into the gas station, I looked, I had a new Snapchat message. But for me to capture that and listen to that, I had to have my finger on the screen, and if I look away, it's gone. I lose it. So it captured my attention. I literally held it, and these guys simply said, hey, Brian, we saw on Twitter that you were looking for movers. We do moving. And they had like a funny little gig where they picked up the guy in a chair and moved him around. Well, I can tell you what, they're moving my family into my house next week because they listened, they engaged, and they captured my attention. And Snapchat, that captured, acquired attention, that it does go away, is so contagious because I think it's really hard to stand out from the noise today.
Yifat, what do you tell businesses when maybe they're floundering, maybe they're not sure what they're doing with social media? What piece of advice do you give them?
It's very hard. I used to say, I think when we talked 2 years ago, and I shared that I really suck at social media, but I'm really good with people. So I started really using social media, and mostly Google+, because that's where I really talk to people. I can see your faces. On Twitter, I don't know who I'm talking to. So that was the hard part. But now the thing with social media is like, the scary part is that you talk to the void. You don't know who's there. It's kind of like this huge thing that's like, okay, who are these people? What are they talking about? What are they doing? And how do I make them love me? So instead of that, when there's a tool that's really, really easy to let you know how you can help other people, and it's basically a survey, right? So people come to your site, or you ask them questions online on social media, you posted it, and you just ask them question, hey, what's your problem? Because you probably have like a billion solutions, and you don't know which one of your solutions fits me. And so if you just find what fits me, like what bugs me, right, then I will become your biggest fan. And it happened to me because some of my clients are building relationship advice, and I was telling them, you need to find a survey. You need to survey your audiences because you don't know what they're doing. So to give them an example, I went and I looked for a survey, and I found one. It had like 70 questions, and I'm like, who's going to answer 70 questions? Come on. And then I start going through those 70 questions, and before I know it, I'm done. And they give me an example of what I am, like what my flaws in a relationship is. And I'm like, oh my God, they're right on spot. I really need their advice. I went and bought 2 of their books right there and then.
Okay.
So if they know exactly, like if you know, like, hey, if you're going to buy my product tomorrow, you're going to find the love of your life. You're going to wake up skinnier. You're going to whatever. But
a real benefit.
That's my issue, right? I want to wake up skinnier. If you tell it to Mike, Mike will be like, whatever. Talk to me about food or wine. Right? But if you know what each person's buttons are, then you can really help them. So surveying is really, really easy. It's free tools out there, and that allows you to know how
Survey
to
Monkey, or do you have a favorite survey tool?
Jotform is free.
Jotform.
Jotform.
Okay.
Free, and you can integrate it with PayPal. You can integrate it with YouTube. You can let people upload images and all that stuff. So super easy, and basically you segment the people who are coming to your site, and now you know how to talk to them.
Interesting. Okay.
Easier.
Well, yeah. What about the idea of, there's only so many hours in the day, so you've got to divvy up your time between the various platforms, and you want to hit all of them a little bit, perhaps. What about your typical routine on social media, Mike? How do you make decisions about where to spend your time and why?
Well, it's actually an interesting story in my case because a few years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, I used Google Plus exclusively because I found it to be so good, and I could use tools to have some of my posts automatically go out to Twitter and Facebook and so on.
I remember.
And then when I started in broadcasting, that worked great when I was just writing, but when I started in broadcasting as well, I still do writing, and now I'm do a daily tech show. I found out that that just wasn't going to cut it because so much of the audience was on different platforms, and I really needed to engage everywhere. So I have a different routine now. Google Plus is still my #1 site, but I think about the posts in specific categories. So there's one category of posts where I want to actively promote my show or my column. So if I write a column, I want to say, hey, here's the column, go read it. I want to drive traffic very directly. Now, if that's all I did, I would fail miserably because that's just, nobody wants to just be just sort of like promoted to all the time.
Advertised to, yeah,
so
right.
That stuff just goes without saying. When I do a show, I do the promotion stuff. So I'll go and I'll post. I have a specific checklist where I say, okay, upload the file to Facebook and then to the page of the show. And then once that's uploaded, I share it from my personal Facebook account and then go to Google Plus and go to the Google Plus community and upload the YouTube video link to the YouTube video on that community. And on Twitter.
You mean you choose a specific community in Google Plus, or just Google Plus in general?
The community, your business should have a community. Your product should have a community. So my show, Tech News Today, has its own Tech News Today community. Gotcha. Okay. And so notice that the media is different on each one. So I upload the entire file to Facebook for Facebook. I link to the HD version on Twitter. I paste in the YouTube, which is a lower res version, but it's YouTube and plays natively. That automatically propagates to my Tumblr page and so on. And so that's the promotion part. Now, the second category of posting that I do is I consider it blogging. I engage with content. I think about things. I see what people are posting, and I respond to it, or I talk about my ideas. And what the nature of that information dictates where it's going to go. So let me give you an example. I went to a really nice restaurant last weekend, and the food is beautiful visually. The setting is beautiful visually. So I will take a picture. I'm one of those food picture people. I took a picture of my food, and it's just, that's going straight to Instagram, right? Because they eat that stuff up literally. Right. And then there's a different angle. Like I'll use a different camera angle that's more amenable to Google Plus, which would have more environmental, will show people and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. If I have an observation to make. So I want to just criticize, I want to criticize somebody who's in the media or something like that. I'll just throw that out on Twitter because that's the nature of Twitter. Twitter loves those quick and dirty little observations.
Right.
If I have a fully developed idea, I want to really explore it, I'll take that to Google Plus because that's where I can have a really great conversation. If it's something about my personal life, I'll take that to Facebook. And I think it's more important to do deep quality engagement less often than it is to bang out robotically all the time. So it's kind of a fine, thing that has to be fine-tuned. But you basically want to really deeply engage everywhere you engage. So
the key word I'm hearing there is the deep engagement as opposed to merely the scatter shot out there.
Exactly. They will remember a really great post for a long time, but people will not forgive you for
junk.
Low quality. They'll just unfollow you.
Right.
You lose people. So you really want to make sure that your heart's in it everywhere you go and every time you post.
Brian, what's the routine for you? I take it you wake up early and hit the platforms pretty early in the morning, maybe before more morning and coffee, or what do you do every day on social media?
So I think Mike put up a really great point. I think a thing of businesses miss. They hear the word real time and think that believes they really try to think that that's an excuse for not having a strategy. And I actually think it's the opposite. I think the reason you're great on social media, the reason Mike knows what he's doing and drives great engagement is everything has a strategy behind it. And I think being real time is important, but I think at the right time is the key. And I really focus when I work with brands and I hear someone talk about them, I say, you want to be on the big four, but you also want to be really great at those big four before you go on to other ones. So for me,
just to be clear about the big four, spell them out.
So I'd say maybe it's even 5 now. Because Instagram might be considered Facebook, but we have Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and G+.
Okay.
And so I really think of those as the big four where you need a presence on those, and you can link G+ to YouTube, and you can link Facebook to Instagram if you want to kind of tie those together. But I think having a presence is important on there, but really having a strategy behind not only what you're posting, but why and what your plan is to respond to it. Because for me, everything is about a story. It's all about not only what I'm posting, but it's the avatar you use. It's the language you use in the profile picture. There's so many things that you can build upon. And I think so many brands say, well, it's real time, and I don't trust them. I don't trust my social media manager because I hired an intern instead of empowering somebody. Because you want this person to reply for your brand, tell your brand story, convey the brand message, sales, customer service. Oh wait, I want to hire him as an intern, but I want him to do these 5 things that would, normally it would be someone that has a seat in the boardroom. And I think that is a conversation that really comes down to, okay, let's convey our story, let's convey our message. And I mean, engagement, I think we all three, have lived and breathed the idea of engagement. I think social media can be a time suck, and I will not ever say it will not. But if you strategically understand, and I'm a big fan of tweaking notifications. So I have certain notifications that pop up on my computer versus on my laptop. I think Mike had a phone go off and he had 4 devices go off. Sometimes I feel like that happens for me with notifications, but I have a Pebble watch that I wear, and I actually have what I consider VIP notifications that get sent to my watch. Therefore, if a client is messaging me on Twitter, it actually vibrates my wrist to interrupt my day. But if it's someone just tweeting and I'm getting notifications, then I let that go down the way. So for me, it's a lot about strategy. I mean, I over-strategize too. I think that's a problem. I had 9 individual personal Twitter accounts when I started on Twitter because I like Pittsburgh sports, I play poker, I like social media, and all of a sudden I spent a lot more time trying to figure out what I should post where, rather than being myself, putting it into my strategy and implementing it and then engaging. So I think, for me,
how many Twitter accounts do you have now that you've pulled it down?
Yeah, now I run 4 personal Twitter accounts. So
okay.
I have, but see, and I think that's an interesting piece because Twitter has had Twitter's changed my life, changed both personal and professional life. I have business partner clients and those that all contact me first. Actually, one of them is someone I've been working with for almost 2 years. We've never met in person. That's going to change June 30th, but we've never actually met in person. We've done a Google Hangout Live for 2 years every single Monday, but yet never met in person. And I think of them not only as a best friend, but someone that I've been working with and a colleague. And it's because it's more than just the social platform you're on. I don't want more followers. I don't have near as many followers as as these 2 all-stars do. But for me, I want to create more people, and I have a kind of a segue here just to kind of wrap it. My dad, who's not on social media, he's owned candy companies as an entrepreneur, and I was doing a Google Hangout Live, and we all know that sometimes you get messages, and a text message comes up from my dad, the little in message, and he says, "Son, I love what you're doing. but social media will never replace a handshake. And I simply read that on there, and I said, Dad, you're right. It will not replace a handshake, but it's going to give me the opportunity to have additional handshakes and turn some of those handshakes into hugs. And I think if a brand can truly do that, when you're engaging, you actually care. I mean, it takes a lot of work. There's no easy button. I'm not claiming this is easy. But for me, I'm a computer science major. I fell in love with social media because YouTube was teaching me amazing things. I was in communities. I was in AOL forums. All these things were making me a better person, to where I was like, well, how can I amplify this? How can I help more people? And I think when you do that, when you engage and you have a strategy. So I was smiling ear to ear when I heard Mike's strategy on each one of those, because so many people, even those that were used to be really great on Twitter or maybe really great on Facebook, they missed it. And they don't have a strategy for driving engagement on Google+, so they just complain that Google+ isn't for them. But yeah, they didn't build a strategy for that community, for that audience.
Yifat, handshakes and hugs, and your routine for getting maximum handshakes and hugs out there on the social media platform. How do you divvy up your time?
It's called hurling. I think we talked about that. We're
hurling. What is hurling?
I haven't yet heard with Mike and Brian yet, or you, James. But I've met people on Google Plus that I'm working with across the world, the same as Brian. And a friend of mine that I met on Google Plus is now coming in to stay with me for a few months. And I'm excited. I don't like people staying with me, and I love her personality, and we would have never connected if it weren't for this face-to-face medium. But I want to say something about what Brian was saying. Have you noticed in the last, I think, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, how many people have had to resign from their jobs because of social media?
Oh, it's been a lot. Over the last few years, people, because on Twitter, for example, there's a very low bar. You can say something stupid, and suddenly that's it.
But like the impact, right? Remember, the head of FIFA was there for like what, 6 years or something, and nobody was able to. They can't outvote him because he chooses himself as the president. And then John Oliver went on TV and said, "Hey guys, help me get this guy out because he's corrupted." Or the same thing with Rachel Donzel. Orange is the new black, right? So
well, I think
she had 2 days and she's out. What's that?
Right. I mean, social media or technology can't fix stupid, right? I mean, stupid is just gonna, and I think part of that problem is social and tech now amplify, right? I mean, you amplify. So if you do make that mistake, it really is gonna amplify those that are doing bad or messing up. But I also think we have to think of it almost from the reverse. Think about how much social good can be done now because we're able to do the same thing. So that although now that those people that are doing bad things, and yes, if you screw up one time, that shouldn't be the mistake to fire. I think that's people that are not understanding the platform, and rather than really own the fact that they didn't trust them in the first place and everybody's human, they fire them. But I mean, I think you're right. I think it's, it is one of those things that it's not only scary, but I mean, there is so much that can be done great and bad on social media. You do have to respect the power.
The reason why I was mentioning that is because, yes, you don't want to put an intern in charge of, your contact with the world when the world can affect your business in that, in that much. So to go to what I'm doing on social media, I listen, I read, and I want to start playing with Periscope, because Periscope seems like you just go in there and just start sharing your opinions. So I read a lot, and I have a bunch of opinions. I'm like, I think I can start developing relationship just by sharing my opinions, which is what I was doing on Google+. There's so much to read. You just go in there, and that's engagement. Engagement is actually not creating content, but responding to content, sharing content, mentioning people, commenting, giving them like compliments. So if you do that for like a month, you start building your audience. And you start building your relationship, and you start finding those lonely lover 52 that start talking about you and sharing you.
We all want to find a lonely lover 52 for sure. Yeah, we all need one. Yeah. No, I think if just one more question. I think sort of the big thinker philosophical question. If we can look into our crystal ball, and obviously social media has evolved at a furious pace over the last few years, and has changed a lot of things: media, community life, advertising, business. Where is this going? Where is social media going in terms of how it influences us as individuals, as citizens? What is this going to look like, say, 3-5 years from now? Mr. Elgin, what's your take on that?
Well, a couple of things. One aspect is where is it going, and the other aspect is where are we going to be? And where it's going is, in general, social media is like any physical thing in the universe. It goes toward entropy. So the social media, there are more social media sites opportunities, communities, and so on, and there will continue to be more and more and more. So that's a challenge, but that it also comes with it, by the way, an attitude about social media that everyone should embrace. The instinct, I think, for business is, let's go invest all this resources and then show me the results. You won't see the results. It will always feel like you're not getting results. It won't feel like it's worth the results that you're getting. And the reason for that is, oftentimes it feels like hardly anybody's paying attention. You go to these, Yifat mentioned Periscope and Meerkat and those kinds of things. They have small audiences. If you have 200 people watching your video, that's actually really good. That's a relatively large number of people. For a big company, that seems like nothing. You always have to take this social media attitude of, I'm not going to try to go for the big home runs, the big, I'm going to be satisfied really connecting with the people who are there, because the reason is you don't know what is going to happen with your engagement. For example, you may be just doing your social media thing, interacting with people, and you may say something that is going to be discovered by some other person when they do a search on Google or something. Mm-hmm. They're going to go to your thing, they're going to say, wow, and they're going to start digging into your thing, and that person may end up being your business partner, or maybe end up it may be some huge superstar on social media that, Beyonce may share a link to your stuff, or you never know what's going to happen. And so the second thing is, you never know what the butterfly effect is of your post. For example, someone may take what they've seen on your engagement and take off, and they may give a presentation about it to some influencers and so on. So you have to be satisfied with the knowledge that it's never going to feel like you're getting a return on your investment, and there's no way to measure this stuff.
Really, all those things that, in Walmart, on Facebook we see, offers by, chicken companies or Walmart or whatever, and if you like it, you get a certain deal, and they count the number of likes and the coupons sent out. I mean, that very, one-to-one retail thing, that's not, quote-unquote, producing results?
That is producing a result, but that's not the purpose. That's not what's powerful about social media. The stuff that's most powerful about social media are the things you can't measure. How you make people feel about your brand, about your information, how you can affect the sort of subculture of your customers, potential customers, and so on. So that's I think that's a very important thing for anyone engaged in business social media to keep in mind, is that the unmeasurables are the most valuable. The alternative to doing really great social media is either doing it badly or not doing it, and right. Those two are death. You cannot have those. You have to do it well if you want to succeed in life. And very quickly, the other thing about where social media is going is it's always going toward the more visual. So used to be social media was text, so you're typing. Then it was like text with like pictures and GIFs and things like that. Then it's like photography became super, super important. Now video is becoming super important. And in the future, it's going to be virtual reality. 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now, it's going to be virtual reality. But where it's going right now, it's moving from photography to video. And of course, text is still important. Pictures are still important. Video will be important when virtual reality is there. But it's always moving toward the more high definition visual.
Right.
And so if you don't get your visual game on, you're not going to make it. You have to be super, super visual. And these two on the Hangout here, they're ahead of the curve because they're already in the world of video, which is where it's all going right now. Right. But we all need to pay attention, because 1 year from now, we're going to do this again next year, right?
Right.
We're going to be talking about virtual reality. We're going to be talking about Oculus Rift. We're going to be talking about HoloLens. We're going to be talking about Magic Leap. And this stuff is coming. It's going to be on the periphery and on the fringe for a while, but it's coming. And so
yep. Always my avatar will call your avatar, basically.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
They'll have lunch. So, it's always going toward the more visual. You can't be obsessed enough about visuals. Look at Yifat's background there. You can't be obsessed enough.
Yes.
Obsessed with the visuals.
Yifat, what's your take looking a few years from now? And I know, by the way, if you do need to go in about 5 minutes or so, I know you had a hard stop, but I want to hear your thoughts if you need to go. The future.
No, that's fine.
What are we going to be talking about, say, 3-5 years from now? We'll be in a sort of a 3D holoscope talking with each other, but what's it going to look like, and how do we prepare for that future?
So it's very interesting, right? Because Brian was just mentioning the pebble on his wrist. and the people who are getting through, right? So there's like a few people who are getting through to him and getting his attention whenever they need to, and the rest of them is whenever he has time to. So you have the wearables that are always on you, with you, and you have those levels of your choosing who's going to be the person that I get information from. And then you have the issue of privacy. We basically gave up privacy.
Right.
There's no more.
That's
Right? There's
a
no
memory.
privacy.
That's so 2004.
Yeah, we gave it up, but we have these, seemingly levels of how we're connecting with people, and there's so much noise there, which is why you have to have those gates. So if you want to stand out in social media and connect to people, it has to be face to face. It has to be personal. It has to be unique. It cannot be just so general that everybody else is doing it and you're just one of the rest, right? And you have to build those relationships. Because if I don't have any relationship with Brian, I'll never vibrate on his wrist. Which I want to vibrate on your wrist, Brian.
That's so true.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful. We all want to vibrate on your list.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, for sure. But how does that change? That is true today. But what about 5 years from now? If we're
well, if you're not, so think about your content. Think about how you're reaching people, right? If it's not available on mobile right now, we already have the mobile get-on thing, right? If your content is not in the places where people are accessing it, whether it's HoloLens, which I'm fascinated to see. Mm-hmm. Right, HoloLens or Google Glass or the phone or your phone on your mobile, then and it's not coming in a way that you can connect to it, and it's too general, then it's not social. It's just another drop in the ocean. Right. So if you're preparing for the next 5 years, I would say become personal with your audience, build an audience, build a relationship with them, and like Mike was saying, face-to-face, visual, live video, Periscope. I'm still getting the courage to do this. It's kind of weird for me to just talk to a camera and not people.
Right.
Right. It's kind of
human interaction. It works for you.
What's that?
Yeah, human interaction works for you.
Yeah, I need to see your eyes. It's kind of weird for me that you're just watching. Have you guys watched it? Mike, have you seen it? Like, I know Brian is using it, but it's kind of like you're really peeping into people's houses and offices. Like I saw Kevin Hart, and he's just sitting at home, and I'm like, what does he have in his house?
Right.
Like it's really peeping. So I don't know how I feel about that yet, but it's catching on, and it's really interesting, and it's visual, and it's right there, and it's live, and it's when it happens, and there's no trace of it later on. So maybe people are more open when it happens. But that's what it is, right? It's the transparency and the connection between people. Otherwise, you're not going to be around, like Mike was saying.
Brian, what's it going to look like that day when you retire from social media in whatever year, 2000, whatever it is, 45, 50, and what is social media going to look like then, or even just a few years from now?
So I love the conversation, and to me, we're in this merge where the rate of change, no matter if it's technology, social media, mobile, is at a pace we've never ever seen before. I mean, innovation is happening beyond belief. I mean, live streaming is not new. The reason I love Periscope and Meerkat is because finally my phone, the camera on my phone, the data plan that I have, and Wi-Fi are now up to enough technology speed to actually bring that to me, because I've been in love with Google Hangouts for 5 years, right? And so that part's not new. But what I believe is we went from like a text-based online world, which was very far away from what our human offline world is. And I think 5 years from now, it's not about offline and online. If you suck offline, you suck online. And it is so true. And the reason Periscope and Meerkat I fell in love with these platforms is it is a transparent look. And to your point, it's that reality TV meets voyeurism world that we're in today. But if I can look you in your digital eyeballs and I can answer questions and engage, and kind of goes back to our early comment, what are brands doing great? They're helping their customers, they're listening to their audience, but they're creating an experience. People don't want to buy a product. I don't buy a phone to have a new device in my pocket. I got plenty of devices. I buy a phone because it enables me to have new experiences. And I think social media is now coming to this world where, right now for me to get my Pebble Watch to vibrate, it's an if this then that recipe. It's a code that I wrote. It's very geeky, right? I'm a computer guy. But 2 years from now, all of those things are click of the button. The reason Periscope and Meerkat became really powerful, it's one click on a device that everybody already has in their pocket. If it was, part of the reason I've loved Google Hangouts, but I'm also limited by Google Hangouts, is I need a good webcam. I have to be on a laptop. The mobile aspect, and I don't think it's mobile first, it's mobile now. And the reason it's mobile now is because we expected this is how we work. This is how we interact. And I think the future, I think 5 years from now, I believe video is the power. I think video is the future of it. But I think it's really this element of, I just want to relate with humans. I want, if Richard Branson is getting off of his airplane and he's talking about how he had a bad day and the ice melted on his drink and he's mad he wasn't able to fill his drink, you have a human connection with someone that probably doesn't live in your world day to day. But now you have kind of that affiliation, and that's what every brand has wanted for the last 20 years, but yet they've struggled because we've had what I would say we created this world where we create a lot of content for content's sake. If you now create great content and you have value to provide, you're going to win. But you have to be able to embrace that, create great content, convey, and listen. I'm excited because, I mean, video, I couldn't believe starting doing Meerkat at South by Southwest and Periscope over the last couple of months. It's not only opened up doors, but it's opened up windows. I fell in love with new tech websites that I never, like The Verge, I'll give an example. The Verge, they started doing, once a day, they give their access to their account so their blogger can share why they posted, what inspired the blog post, what data they used. So now when I'm reading that content, I have their voice, I've looked them in their eyes, and I now go to The Verge going, I wonder what such and such had because I have a relationship. And that element, I mean, that's why I love Google Hangouts Live, because you really do feel like I'm friends, I'm neighbors. I'm not going up when I first see you and go, oh, that's what you look like. It's about that visual element. And even Twitter, I know for Twitter's been a big impact for me. Twitter video now auto-plays in your Twitter feed. So you have 30 seconds of auto-played video. And that's not a mistake. That is brand new information. And if you're not using that, I do 5 of them a day. 5 Twitter videos a day. It pops up on my phone as a notification to remind me. And I reach out to people, businesses, anybody that's engaging me, and I thank them. Because you know what? I want to stand out from the noise, let them look me in the digital eyeballs, and I want them to know I care. And if you can do that, video is the game. And I can't wait. 5 years from now, I'm also one of those guys. Virtual reality, I was playing with some of those toys a couple weeks ago at an event, and I can't wait to be able to really, truly engage and relate in this transparent, authentic way.
Thank you. I think we had a very 2015 moment. We were very current. The problem is once I hit stop, which I'll do in 1 second, we will move towards obsolescence, by the microsecond. But we will refresh quickly. Thank you very much for your expertise, the 3 of you, and I'll send you the link. We can all tweet about it. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Thanks James.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.